Lemire, nice to meet you today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you?
I am phenomenal, and it's so nice to have you here to talk with the Center for Social Capital. Just to let our readers and our viewers in on why we are speaking to you, it's because last year we honored you in our 2020, 24, 25 nomination article, as you were nominated by Suzanne Evans of AAA Translations, one of our favorite people at the Dave Alexander Center for Social Capital.
Yeah, Suzanne's amazing. She's been a great friend and mentor to me also.
So it's very nice to have you in our very prestigious and compelling network of compassionate, people-centric business leaders. We welcome you, and I want to tell everybody a little bit about you. You're a very successful author and speaker, but you also are a motivator in some pretty extraordinary ways that have a lot to do with what we talk about and what we are about, which is really zeroing in on the value of people and making people's lives better in whatever way we can through business. So rather than me explain what you do and how you do it, I'd love you to tell everybody about, what you do and why you're proud to do it.
Sure. So, what I typically tell people, Chris, when I'm meeting someone for the first time is I work with success-driven leaders and teams who want to be more, make more, and sell more with confidence and momentum through simple sales and success habits. Now, that comes from having been in a frontline seller sales career for 2 decades and then moving into a corporate sales trainer role for another decade. And then most recently, having founded my company, AIM Training and Consulting, where we are doing exactly that. We are working with leaders and teams. And with that focus, primarily, it's really all about bringing out the best in people, whether we're working with a frontline leader or a team of individuals. And the way that we do that most commonly is by helping people get unstuck out of their own way so they can perform better on teams, within companies, and a lot of times bring more sales and revenue to companies.
In a nutshell, how do you do that?
That is a great question, Chris. The way that I do that really is the first piece that I always think is the most important when we meet with new people is the discovery and really understanding something that I believe is so important, intrinsic validation and stepping into somebody else's world. So the most important thing we need to do first is we need to find out somebody's why or why now. And that's really about finding out what are some of the driving challenges, pains, issues, what are the costs behind the problems, whether it's, financial costs, emotional costs, human capital type costs. And we want to find out what those challenges are first, because when we can do that first, then not only can we guide them to a new solution in a new way, it makes it easier to paint out a vision for how we're going to take that company or client or individual to where they want to go. And also it makes it easier for them to make a commitment to us to do this partnership because we clearly understand their needs, challenges, and issues, which is really, I would say, more of a consultative approach than I've seen sometimes other approaches or sales professionals or sales organizations or companies or leaders back when I was in sales, having been exposed to different ways of doing things.
And we did an entire feature on empathy and the
Mhm.
value of empathy. And it sounds like that's something that you're kind of zeroing in on there, isn't it? And I imagine that that's not only something you're helping people to do for themselves, but potentially company owners to do with their employees as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. I believe that one of my favorite sayings from the great Zig Ziglar is people buy from whom they like and whom they trust. And I think part of this too is the ability to empathy has so many different meanings to me. And one of the biggest meanings, though, Chris, is the ability to learn from past experiences, find the gifts in past experiences. One of the sayings I often say is the learning happens in the valleys. And I think
Mm.
sometimes whether it's a business decision or sales that have not gone the way we wanted, or interactions that have gone not the way we wanted, or even past events in our personal life, sometimes we might look back on those as mistakes or bumps. And instead, what I always encourage individuals do is the exact opposite, is to find the good in those experiences, ask ourselves, how did that make me a better person? What did I learn from it? What superpowers did that give me? What insights, what wisdom have I learned from that that I can either serve or teach somebody else with and make a bigger contribution because of that, whatever that event or experience was.
So it's so amazing that you bring that up. My third book was called Overcoming Life's Seven Common Tragedies. And it looked at all the worst things that can happen in our lives and how we can, find our purpose through those. And working on that book, I interviewed so many people who had been through so many challenges, and their lives were improved by digging a little deeper and understanding themselves, understanding others a little bit more. And it sounds like that's something that, you definitely understand. You've had some experiences in your own life, from what I understand. And in fact, you had a very challenging situation when you were young.
Mhm.
Tell our viewers a little bit about that and how it transformed, what you do and how you look at life.
Sure. So, the event that happened is I was quite young. I was 9 years old and happened locally here in my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri. But I was with my mom and a couple kids that lived next door to us, two sisters, a brother. And what happened is, as we were leaving this amusement park one evening, my mom took the outer road of a highway to avoid all the traffic because everyone was leaving at the same time. And as we did that, I always say that someone who'd had too much to drink, no business being behind the wheel of a car, was headed straight at us. So my
Oh,
mom, it's horrible. My mom, I always say, made the best decision in a split second's time that she could to save all of our lives, and she dodged that oncoming vehicle. And as she did, we got broadsided by a fence, and I took the brunt of all of the impact. So what that really came down to is me waking up in a hospital room one day, not really knowing why I was there and what had happened. And then my mom explaining to me we'd been in this car accident. And initially my thought was I probably have a few scratches or bumps or bruises. My left wrist had been broken, was in a cast, but what happened is I had asked her, can I see what I look like? And she said, I need to ask the doctor first. I looked in the mirror and I was just horrified. The story that I was told was basically that as I was in the intensive care unit, my family was told if I did survive, it was likely I might be brain damaged, deaf, blind, may probably have permanent brain damage. And so what I took from that experience is the biggest challenge was the blow it took to my self-confidence. I always share with people that the too many surgeries of cosmetic reconstructive surgery on my face over the years, that was the easy part. The tough part was what it did to my self-confidence. And so some miracles started happening after I left the hospital. I got a book called Determination, the Story of Helen Keller from my grandmother. At age
mm,
9, started reading that and didn't really know what that word was, but I started learning at that age that, we can choose our thoughts. We can choose to be confident and courageous and determined in spite of adversity. And then my mom gave me a Tony Robbins book called Awaken the Giant Within when I was 14. And then I went to a self-development seminar when I was 19, and that started really a trajectory of me finding out and figuring out it's not really what we look like physically on the outside that matters. It's what's on the inside. It's what's in our heart and soul that matters the most. So my life struggle was always self-confidence. And even when I got into my sales career, I still struggle with self-confidence, still had a hard time giving presentations. And I figured out that really my calling and my mission was to not only be a master and an excellent person with self-confidence, it was a mission to teach it to other people. So that's really where I started tapping into moving out of a sales career into sales training and then personal and professional development, because I figured out that confidence is a skill we all can learn and we can all get better at. And that I was in a sense my own case study by facing those adversity and challenges at such a young age. And then now one of the factors I call in my business is the sales confidence code, where sales isn't just about selling something to somebody else. Sales is also really, I personally believe, about us being in true ownership of our true gifts and our
mm.
unique skills and capabilities. And also, if we are in a sales or business development role, it's about having the confidence to convey that to somebody else as well at the same time.
I love that because what you're essentially saying is you don't want people to just be these sales machines. You want them to be themselves and be proud of who they are and really have a great deal of self-love that they're able to then communicate. You know, my dad was one of the greatest salespeople in the world, and people used to hug him because he just made them feel good. And
Uh-huh.
you know, he just exuded self-confidence. But I think a lot of that was that self-love. You know, he was proud of who he was, and he wanted to share his gifts and abilities and help other people. Is that a big part of uh, what's one of the greatest challenges? Maybe I put it that way. Do you have a do you notice that when you go in to train people or that to be salespeople that they don't expect that that's what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Chris, because part of the way I created the sales confidence code also, it was from my personal life experience and my professional life experience. So what I found when I was, the seller working for a company at the time is most of the companies I work for only teach the doingness and the outer game, right? How to get more business, how to sell, how to close, how to negotiate and handle objections. But one thing they never talk about is how to be mentally tough, resilient, confident, determined, courageous. So when I work with companies, what I try to help them see is that we play two games in sales and success. We play an inner game, which is again our mindset, our self-confidence, our determination or courage, self-discipline. It's six habits I talk about. And then we play an outer game. And we have success and we have more wins when we have both of those games balanced. And all too often we spend a little bit too much time on this outer world. And I actually became a student when I was in sales because I found all the companies I worked for weren't teaching this. So, I went to seminars, I joined Toastmasters. I spent a lot of my own personal money to go out and just get better at that, reading books because I couldn't find it anywhere else. And it really did improve my performance. And I think it was also a pathway to the trajectory and where I am today was by just being a student and teaching myself those skills that, again, I couldn't find in any of the companies I worked for.
So, would it be safe to say that you believe companies got to build people up if they want to build up their profits and build up their sales? They got to build those people up first, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And it's interesting, Chris, because sometimes I meet with companies and who will remain anonymous that I see that I'm talking to somebody who's a sales leader and I can tell I could just feel and read that burnout right on their face on a call we might be doing. Maybe it's a Zoom call, for instance, and I can feel that tension and that stress. I can tell they're working 24/7. I can tell they're doing more than they think they should be doing to make the numbers. And sometimes they don't see that value of doing that inner work, which is going to help them in all parts of their life. So it is very common and it's more common than I think we think it might be. And then again, I do meet with some leaders who instantly they get it and they know that yes, my team is not producing because we're focusing on the wrong parts. We're really not focusing on that human potential and that inner game like what you just talked about.
What are some of the responses that you get possibly when you present this, to doubters? What do people say when you come in with this? Do you get people that say, "Well, I don't know if I buy this," and how do
Yeah.
you convince them that this is true, that what you're saying works?
It's interesting because most of the times what I find people do is they avoid the topic. So I will talk to them or I'll have them take, I am a certified habit finder coach. That's part of these six habits I'm talking about. And I'll ask them to take the assessment, they'll take it and we'll review it. And sometimes it just clicks and sometimes it doesn't click. And I think what happens all too often is I feel like as a society, I think we're a little bit conditioned to just keep working harder. The American dream, just keep doing more and
Yeah,
doing more and running harder. And that's the answer to
yeah.
everything. And they typically will just, when it comes down to that proposal, they might just, well, let's not do that part. Let's only just do the sales skills training and the doing more part of it. So I am definitely on a mission to change the way that the world thinks about the inner and the outer game and the sales confidence code. Because I do believe we play these two games. And when we have those aligned, I was my own student of that as well. I was the driving salesperson for decades. I still have my sales plaques on my wall, my trophies, all these great accomplishments. But there was also a lot of cost to that. I mean, it costed me a marriage, it costed me
Mm.
work-life balance. And I look back on that and I was really burned out and tired. And I remember when I left my sales career, I told my ex-husband, if I spend one more day in this, I'm going to end up in a casket. I mean, I'm so burned out,
Wow.
so run down, and I didn't know why. And now looking back, I can see why, because I didn't really take care of that inner self to the way that I possibly could have.
I'm assuming your life has changed a lot since you adopted this new perspective, right?
Yes, it has.
Do you find it sounds like you're not only teaching people about sales, obviously, then, but you're teaching them how to have a better, fuller life as well, right?
Yes. So part of my curriculum, I do a corporate curriculum that includes the success habits focus and also some of the sales skills focus. And sometimes it's only the success habits, or it's only the sales side. But I also do work with the community. So I do a workshop in which we really only focus on these 6 habits. And that's typically with just individuals that really want to do some personal development and human potential work on themselves. And typically, the symptom that when I meet with people that are interested in that type of work and want to come to one of my best version of you weekends, the first symptom is we're feeling stuck, or we're feeling like we're just
Mm.
stagnating and nothing's moving, or a relationship is in turmoil, or our career's in turmoil, or our finances. It usually shows up in one of these, I call the cast of characters, where what we find out is that it's actually our thought habits that are actually keeping us stuck in one of those areas.
I mean, you're hitting on so many subjects and so many topics that are probably incredibly timely right now, right? I mean, um, do you get a sense that what you're doing and what you're talking about is needed even more so now? I mean, we with inflation and with everything going on, I think people are really struggling even more to keep up, to get ahead. Do you get a sense of that?
I do, Chris, and it's interesting because after that, the pandemic was really a game changer for in so many ways, right? We all remember what it was like to be, locked in our houses and just the way
Yeah.
the world was at that time. But something that's very interesting is I went to a chief sales officer conference about a year after the pandemic. Well, kind of in that kind of out of it, but not out of it yet, 2021. And there had been some research that had been done, and what it showed was that most of us, like they did a survey, and about 89% of people confessed to being more burned out than ever
Wow.
post-pandemic.
Yeah.
And the Great Resignation and a lot of those trends came from that, and a lot of it was because our home became our work, and our work became our home, and also people began to they began to burn out and they began to lose momentum. But on the flip side of that, some of the survey feedback came back that some of the best ways you can get your team, your individuals, your leadership re-engage is through personal and professional development and making
Hmm.
that part of your training curriculum.
Yeah.
So that was the interesting part that I took away from that conference.
Again, you brought up another one of our feature articles. We did a feature called Well-Being and Slaying the Burnout Dragon. It was our second most read, article of the year. And clearly, people are struggling with that so much. And I think the leaders that realize that, you can't just try to make people better employees. You have to help them live better lives. And that's then will turn into them, being better employees. Plus the fact that we all just want to be happy, and making people happy, I think, uh, is an important part of fulfillment in life, right? If you're a company owner or if you're an employee, you want to be happy, and if you're not happy, you're not going to do well at work. So you get that, obviously, in a big way. What are some of your proudest moments or your proudest accomplishments, in doing things the way you do? Obviously, you've turned your own life around, in a lot of ways, and are having a lot more fulfillment. What kind of responses do you get from people?
The biggest response that I get is, I think being vulnerable to share your own personal story and how your life experiences can be your greatest gift and your greatest asset. And, when
Mm.
you were asking about what some of my proudest moments were, one of the biggest pivotal points, in addition to the accident I was in when I was very young, was back in 2011. I wrote this story in my book, From Zero to Sales Hero, and I had the best year of my sales career. And then the next year, let's just say I didn't perform the way I should be performing. I wasn't selling, I was stuck. And I got a notice from my employer, the PIP, or performance improvement plan, that basically said, if you don't turn around your sales performance in 90 days, we're going to terminate you. And at first I was angry. And I thought, how could they do this? I've been, in the top 10, and what's wrong with them? And then, I was over the day got really shocked and disillusioned of, oh my gosh, if I lose my job and sales, this is my identity. This is who I am. This is everybody. What would I do? What would my customers say? What would my friends and family say? And the game changer moment for that was I made a decision that day to I could either quit this job and find something else, or maybe I could somehow by miracle turn it around. And I decided to do the somehow by a miracle turn around. I hired a sales coach. I to this day will still say that is probably one of the best professional decisions I ever made. And this person got me to see that three things were in my way of success: my attitude was focused on failure. We turned that around. My activity, I'd gotten pretty lazy. I wasn't doing the work anymore. And then last but not least, the accountability. This person held me accountable to every Friday sending my, how many calls I made, how many sales I made, results. And I think from that moment, as I said earlier, the learning happens in the valleys. But I think the other piece of that I would have never realized back then was that I didn't think that setback would inspire me to write my book. I didn't think it would inspire me to see the light that, wow, I would love to coach, teach, and train people from that experience. And most importantly, it really got me to see that asking for help and support is always a good idea. I think as human beings, we feel like we're weak or there's something wrong with us if we reach out for support and help. And I'm really glad I trusted my voice and intuition to do that, because that was really how I started the career trajectory away from being in sales to being more of, again, a coach, consultant, teacher, speaker, mentor. So that was probably a very pivotal moment in my life that I also wanted to share, Chris.
And that's so important. I mean, we're all human beings, right? And we interview so many great CEOs who talk about how one of the greatest things they ever did was when they stopped treating employees just like employees and realized they were people. And for those people then to realize that it's okay for them, to talk about their humanity, to talk about their feelings and thoughts and ideas at work with their employers, with their fellow employees, and to be all that we are as humans, because humanity is wonderful. I mean, human beings are beautiful. I think they're incredible beings, and for us to feel ashamed or afraid to be vulnerable, I think it's to our own detriment that we do that. So I love that you brought that up. And the more human we can be, I think the more successful and the more happy we can be. And I'm so grateful to you for doing that and for teaching that, and for being somebody in the sales space who doesn't try to reduce people to just being
You.
salespeople, but to being humans. And
Right.
that's a beautiful thing. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. One of my mantras, Chris, that I live by is, when I am the best version of myself, I will continue to attract the best people, the best opportunities, the best abundance. And I think if we think about it that way, it really is true, because it is going to be the positivity that another favorite saying is, be somebody that people want to do business with, which just means do the right thing, be a good person, treat people well. We're all going to have bad days, but don't bring that out or take that out on people or customers or clients around you. Find other outlets to manage those emotions.
That's such a wonderful finale to this interview. I really appreciate you saying that, and I feel inspired. I spent a half an hour with you, and I already feel inspired and positive about the rest of my day. So obviously, you know what you're doing, and you're very good at doing it. So thank you for sharing all that with our viewers. I want to make sure that people know about your books. Is it two books?
Yes, Chris, I have two books. They're both on Amazon, and one is called From Zero to Sales Hero: How to double your sales and income in less than 90 days. And that's how I tell my story about how I did that the year I got in sales trouble. And then the other book I wrote is called From Zero to Sales Hero, excuse me, Zero to Speaker Hero. And that is called How to Achieve Fame, Fun, and Fortune as a Speaker or Presenter. And that's where I talk about my journey of overcoming my fear of public speaking and some of the principles of what I think it takes to be an effective speaker or presenter.
Well, absolutely wonderful. I hope all of our readers and our viewers go and check those out. And where can we or they reach you if somebody wants to get a hold of you to bring you into their company or anything else? What's your website?
Sure. It's www.aimtandc.com. So that stands for AIM Training and Consulting.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, hey, I advise everybody to check you out and to listen to this interview over and over again to get more kernels of wisdom. And we'll look forward to having you back again and maybe even having you do some writing for us.
Would love that, Chris. Thank you so much for this opportunity today. It's been great to connect with you.
Absolutely. Take care.
You too.